My name is Tony Nwachukwu. Welcome to RA Exchange Live. We are joined with perhaps one of the most influential and inspiring DJs, producers, label owners, all-round soulful human being, Theo Parrish.
Man, what an introduction. Thank you, Tony. And thank you guys for spending your time here this afternoon talking with us about some stuff. That was lovely.
How are you today?
I'm well. I'm rested. Had a flight. It took off. It landed. I got all my luggage. I do bring a lot of luggage. I got 3 boxes of records in a half bag with me, so that just lets you know what it is. For those that don't know what a half bag is, at one point not too long ago, there were these things called records, and this is what a half bag looks like. And so the half bag, that's where that went in my check luggage. Then there's the full bags, which hold about 65. You can mash in about 80. So I mashed in about 80. So we'll see what happens. But those that know. So I'm very happy I got all my luggage.
It is so good to see you back in London.
Hey, man, good to see you too, man. It's good to be back. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate you guys.
So let's go back to the beginning-ish.
Okay.
Yeah. So, when did you decide that music, the world of music and DJing and production was for you?
It was a 2-part thing. Chicago, we're talking 1986. We're talking. I get invited to go hear Lil Louis at the Bismarck. I walked in, and people were mulling around, and he was playing a little early. He was playing this, like, kind of what people call down tempo, and he went into Stevie Wonder Ass, and I had never heard Stevie Wonder Ass that loud, and it changed because it was a connection for me because that was something my mother raised me on. So to have that connection to what, oh my God, it just came full circle, and then I saw what a sound system could do. That was it. I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. Right? And so that year.
Especially the outro, right?
Say again?
Especially the outro of that track.
Who?
The outro of As.
Oh, see, I didn't really even, all I know is he was playing it, and my jaw dropped. And so let me back up a little bit prior to that. My mother got me this was about 12. She got me a way to listen to the radio. And so I was kind of primed for that moment because you listen to the radio, and to have an individual tasked with presenting this song, then that song, then this song, then that song, for people to listen at a certain time. You heard certain selectors at a certain time on the radio. This is before you can go out, before you can go to clubs, before you can do anything like that. The genius of being able to entertain your kid at home, say, here's a radio, tape deck, and a vinyl player all in one, because they were cheap at that time. It changed everything because it gave me this idea that the world was huge and there were all these different things out here that could touch you. It's much different now where this become a little bit more mechanical, where if you want to hear new songs, it's left up to the listener. But when you're talking about someone tasked with presenting this song, then that song, they're thinking about the human psychology, thinking about the human element. It's more powerful now than I think than it ever was. Oh, this can't be happening. We got to deal with that. Machines, as case in point. I mean, the idea that there was no disturbances. You were alone in your room, and then here comes this music, and then there's someone professional, not amateur, someone that dedicated their lives to doing it and hopefully paid to do so, but they were doing, that's what they did. There wasn't a comma. They played music for people. And so what it did to me was made me go, wow, what is that song? What is that song? I never heard that song before. So you're recording everything. I was recording everything. Lots and lots of audio cassettes, recording. Now, this is all before first year I go out. This is 12, priming 13. Now, dig the age, 13, puberty, shit like that, awkwardness, new hair in new places and strange feelings, So that combined with music, just really it changes the landscape. Then you go out with your friends and you hear a song called Beyond the Clouds. Larry heard, but you didn't know who it was. They didn't tell you who it was. They just played it. And you're just like, what was that? What in the world was that? And you have no context because you haven't been out yet. But then when you go out and you hear as before you hear anything like that, you're just, oh my God, those things, they exist in the same space. I mean, there's people like me out. Now, what you have to remember at this point in time, this is 1986. There were no white people involved in Chicago there. You didn't see them. Think segregation, right? You listen to this, you stay here. You listen to this, you stay here. You don't go there. You're not welcome there. We don't want you there. In fact, we're going to have the police set it up so that every time you think you can be over here after nightfall, we're going to make sure you don't feel comfortable. That part of the musical part of it, the dark side of it, is something that colors most of my generation when it comes to making music. And so the idea that there's this openness is something that most of my career I've had to learn to adjust to. But yet and still play as if that doesn't exist because it's a dichotomy. But I say that to say this. You didn't really think of it in terms of it being a problem when you're 13 years old because that's just what it was. You felt like this was fine. No, we just not welcome up there. Yeah, police just kill black kids. That's just what happens. That's just a fact of life. So now when you look back on it, you're like, golly, it was brutal. But if you look at Chicago still today, it's even more brutal. So we won't get it all dark and everybody be cool. We'll be all right. But these are the conditions. And so if you can to put the violins away and look at these are the rules of the game of life, and this is what we lived through, and this was the music that this is based off of. So understand that, these rhythms you're hearing, that was rebel music. Beyond the Clouds was fuck you. Can You Feel It was fuck you. This is ours. This is ours. We used to be in cars rolling up next to people, and they lock their doors while they're blowing up soul records in the park. Glen Underground talks about it. Like this was our definition. So think of how hip hop was for New York, house music was the same thing for Chicago. Precisely why Common couldn't get out of there and do anything till much, much later. And besides Twister and maybe the Brat, they had to go other places to make it happen because that was not what you played in those places. Because it was a whole bunch of angry, young, black men and women. You drop that tempo, you got some issues. And we can't forget, Chicago had a lot of gang shit going on at the same time. So we talking high recruitment. High recruitment. So young black men like myself that weren't Vice Lord or Gangster Disciple, we were called neutrons. Because we were neutral to either. So if you wasn't trying to be Michael Jordan, you was trying to be Larry Heard or Ron Hardy or Lil Lewis or Farley Jackmaster Funk, who was a radio DJ. And that's where I bring that back to there. You would hear these mix shows every Friday and Saturday. WGCI, WBMX. And you hear this music go from one shade and one rhythm to another one seamlessly. How they doing that? How are they doing it? What is that? And so you emulate that, going down to import records, grabbing it, figuring out, having mixing contests every weekend with my friends. Who can hold the longest transition on these turntables? And they weren't 1200s. They were Geminis. They were ELI 101s with the pitch, with the knob that's encased in the plastic. So you learn how to pinch the turntable, how to use your finger and lightly slow it down and speed it up. That pitch was a guide, but wasn't no way you was gonna tighten it up in time unless you had a 1200. None of us had 1200s. So we had to really get our skill together. So like, I'm sorry, today, cats out here cheating. They got the training wheels on the little Tesla. They can't drive nothing with a, come on now. You can't tell me. It's time to start bringing back mixing contests.
Indeed. So when did you get your opportunity to actually start, from obviously training with your friends to actually playing in front of people and,
That was about, I say my first paid gig, I was 13 years in the bedroom. Yeah, 13 years mixing without the promise of not even being on a poster or nothing like that, because the competition level was that high. City block of Chicago maybe has, 30 homes on it. The next block over, there was another kid that was practicing just like you. One block over, one block up, 2 blocks up. Like the competition level was high. So you never knew your position. And we talking, this was like, it's kind of like a kung fu movie where you had old masters. Then you had the people that studied under them. Then you had the ones that studied under them. Then you had the amateurs that never got to the Shaolin Temple and they're just street fighters. Like, you had so many cats that were bad, that never saw the light of day just because of how absolutely guarded the attention was and how much of a launch pad it was for anything in Chicago. Like I know guys now that were there from the beginning and they still play in Chicago on a regular basis and they got whole careers based on it. But
that's my turn.
Okay. So we would mix every weekend and we would have these mixing contests. And that was about the time that I started to realize that I was pretty good at it. But there was no promise of there being a gig. We would do block parties, stuff like that, friends of ours parties. But, there was no promise of there being anything from it. Mm. And so we talking 13 years before I got my first real money plan. So 26, 13, okay. 26, that was by the time I got to Detroit.
But what's great is because you obviously spent a lot of time cutting your teeth at home, right?
Oh, yeah.
Which means when you actually went to play in front of a public, you were prepared.
Yeah. Because it was competitive.
Yeah.
Competitive and totally based on your skill.
Mm-hmm.
And not only your ability to play songs that had syncopation in it that you could lock up, but can you play something with the drummer moving around? Did you know where the break was where the drummer got in time? Like Los Conquistadores Chocolates. Can you bring that in right? Because if you start from the beginning, you're going to have some issues, but then you give it 3 bars in, you might start running at you a little bit, you might be able to catch it. So the knowledge of the records became a thing there. And so in Chicago, it wasn't enough for you to be able to mix like Farley, but could you mix like Lil Louis Farley, Mike Williams, and all these other guys that would play anything? And you thought when you were young, like, I could do that. No, you can't. Because it's 2 things. You don't have the skill, you don't have the time to practice like that, and on top of that, you don't have the knowledge. And let's even get to another thing. You don't have a life experience. You don't know why you playing out of work, need a job. You don't know why you playing that record.
So I guess from there you had a bit of confidence with DJing, right?
Little bit. Because what was transparent was how difficult it was to become someone.
Yeah.
So at about 5 years, you're still dealing with learning how the technical part. Mm-hmm. At 10 years, you're dealing with the technical part and your so-called sound. 15, you're dealing with sound and the ego of it all. Theo Parrish. You know, I had a couple other DJ names before that I'm not gonna mention here.
No, come on, man. Right. You need come on. You're in London now. Give us one. Give us one.
All right. At one point, I was calling myself Theo Throwing Down Parrish. Right. Okay. Thank God that never took off. Their mouth got humbled because there was some people that just went dot, first and last name, and they were always better than me. So gladly that never took off. But there was some issues, you know what I'm saying? So like that first 15 years, you're dealing with ego shit. And it's not until much later that you start to actually play for people and with people. And so that was...
So the music thing, so in terms of from playing in front of people to actually making tunes.
Yes.
Yeah, the transition was quite swift, right?
It was quick. It was a year later because one of the craziest things that you heard was when people played during then. You would hear a song you never hear again after you heard them play. You'd have to go back to hear that DJ to hear that song again. And that's because they were playing things with they played the two turntables, but they often had a reel-to-reel or a tape deck. And that would give them the opportunity to play things unreleased. And so that was a cutting-edge thing. You had things no one could hear unless you went to hear them. So we had a friend of ours, my brother that passed, Leron Carson. And there was 4 of us, myself, Leron Carson, Ken Frazier, and Spencer Williams. So we had like a little crew. Spencer had the equipment. We'd have the mixing equipment over his house. Leron always had production equipment, but he would mysteriously disappear when we were chasing girls and trying to play basketball and go to the parties and stuff. He would just dip off on Saturdays. Like, where'd he go? I don't know. I think he's at home making tracks. And so one time I went with Leron, and all he was making, he had these machines in the room. I'm like, wow, what's this? And he's like, yeah, I'm making tracks. And he was making songs, way more developed than any of us. And so I started to make songs too, because I wasn't that good at basketball. And so, you know, the way you met girls then was you had to be able to dance at the parties. You couldn't get no girl's phone number if you couldn't dance at the party. And so if you wasn't dancing at the parties, it wouldn't happen. You try to go and talk to them, because you ain't got no money, you ain't got no gang, ain't got no experience. You couldn't take them nowhere. You couldn't do shit. So the only option you had to be social with these young ladies was either at school or you was at these parties. But that was a non sequitur when it came to a 13-year-old on the weekend. You're going outside playing. I'm going to go hang out with Leron and make these beats with him. All right, because Spencer had basketball, and so did Ken. And so you saw they were hooping and stuff and go to games and stuff, and we were like, man, well, never did get that together. So, but we got the tracks together. And so the next year, and if you really want to call it production, you can't really call 13-year-olds messing around with MIDI chords production.
What would you call it?
Fun. Just fun. Fun. Staying out of trouble. Because meanwhile, outside, you had the whole thing playing out. You had Vice Lords and Gangster Disciples all around. Everybody's affiliated. And if you weren't affiliated, you're around cats that were affiliated. So the threat of things taking you way off track was always there. He was always there.
So you had a bunch of releases, obviously, in the early part, a couple of 12s, but you did an album for Peace Frog, which was your first album, right?
Yep.
This is from that. Let's have a quick listen. Yes. And it goes on.
Yes, sir.
And on.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Amazing.
sir. Yeah.
What do you think about when you hear that now?
Wow. I don't remember what that sample was, and I feel embarrassed that I don't. But I'm determined to try to remember it, and I can't remember it. I still can't remember it. Oh well. I was like, oh wow, I like that. That's pretty good. It's strange listening to your own stuff after.
Of course it is.
Well, it's kind of bugged out.
But technically, you kind of grabbed onto the MPC pretty quickly, right?
Oh man,
Yeah.
And I never let go of it. Back then, there was no MPC in that one. That was still SP12 actually.
Mm-hmm.
That one, that I had a hybrid configuration there. I had the SP12,
Mm-hmm.
I had the Juno 106, I had a MMT8,
Mm-hmm.
and
Sound module.
Yeah, the sequencer.
Yeah.
And then there was like another bit or bop in there. I forget which one it was. And then all of that was outboard mixing into a Fostex. And then that Fostex was going down to DAT. And each time you did a mix, you had to put tape on the mixer for levels and then pull everything down. There's no automation.
So against the whole kind of technical fading elements came from that time, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
All of that. Yeah, live mixing. So I got like many takes of it until I got the mix right.
And it was intentional to have a more kind of a hip hop setup rather than there was no 909 or 808 in the building. It's just straight up sample based machines.
I didn't know the difference. Like I didn't know what a hip hop setup was, what a house setup was supposed to be. It was more like, okay, does this machine allow me to make this music?
Mm-hmm.
Like we couldn't really we got a hold of like a 626, but by the time I made that, I was in Detroit by that point.
Okay.
Yeah, and like that came much later. By then, like the majority of the stuff I've made, up at that point was not fit for release. Like in a lot of cases, like with the exception of maybe Insane Asylum, which was barely good enough for my opinion to put out. There's a lot of like not knowing what the fuck I'm doing kind of stuff. But but that was when I had gone to school down in Kansas City, come up to Detroit, and was and we started to make stuff on a regular basis. Like, all right, yeah.
And I guess it's around that time you set up some Sound Signatures, right? Your label.
It was right after that deal. I learned a lot in that deal.
Yeah. So apart from your motivation, obviously, to bring your own music out and create your own identity with your label and maybe work with other people on your label, what was your prime reason for setting up the label?
Oh, real simple. I wasn't going to get screwed over no more.
Okay.
And when I say screwed over, meaning I didn't have to worry about the language of a contract at that point. And I take that on my own. So kids, read your contracts. Learn every word. There was one word I didn't know. It's called perpetuity.
Okay, that word.
And so when you're eager and you want to get to a place, now granted, of all the different deals I could have done, for all intents and purposes, the people that put that out have been A1 with everything. So I had a really good. There was another good side of the deal. It was a partner deal, which is dope. But that one word was the one that I just was like, oh. And I wanted this, and in a young mind, you're going, they got me. No, really, you got yourself, you Mr. Parrish. So what are you going to do about it? I'm going to make myself a vehicle so that it doesn't happen again. And I had the evidence of other people around me that had done that already. KDJ, Mike Banks, Rick Wade, Mike Huckabee. I mean, all these great, Terrence Parker. I mean, a lot of people, Drivetrain, a lot of cats around me that had already set up and were quick with the information. Like, they were like, oh, go down here to Mark Murphy and, get your stuff mastered. And then go over here and go to Archer. And then, distribution, yeah, call up these people, and these people. And you learn, they teach you.
So given that you're working on obviously lots of ideas, some weren't fit for purpose, as you were saying, how do you decide what to put on your label? How do you decide what music represents you in the public sphere?
For me, if it's one of my own productions, I try to have a ratio of maybe a 12-4 ratio. So for every 12 that I do, there's probably about 4 of them that's really dope. And I try to keep that. But that requires a lot of output to keep that up. And also the difference between what I think is dope and what people think are dope. And so that weird in between thing. So that's where playing out really helped a lot, because then I could expose it. Because maybe I feel a way about it, but then I see people react to it like, you know what, this is kind of hitting, I guess. They like it. I guess I should think about putting it out. So those sort of things are going on. And then if it's a license, it used to be based on purely, do I like the song? Then later I learned this, are the people that I'm putting out equitable, and do I like this song? And so that's the other part. Like, you're in bed with these people for however long, and so you have to be very judicious about and thorough. Okay, they got the hottest track. That's cold, but what are they gonna do with it? Do they espouse your philosophical takes? And then even beyond that, are they your friend? And so it used to be just my friends. Then it was, okay, people I don't know. And then it was people I don't know, but I can tell. And then also, too, another thing, are they salesmen or are they maniacs? Because most maniacs are hard to deal with. But at the same time, if you can recognize the mania in yourself in terms of the output, you need to be able to see that mania in other people. And whether or not they're the most balanced individuals, does their music equate the inequities of their character? And if you can, and if as a label person, you can kind of, all right, I'm going to gamble. I hope they don't lose their damn mind. I hope I don't lose my mind fucking with them. You know, like, you find out. Sometimes it works, sometimes you don't. And so then other times I've been like, all right, I'm not licensing shit from nobody no more. It's me, I'm putting all my shit up. Nobody else. You know, so you get to those moments, but then you realize too that it does help sometimes to see other people. Because some people need a deal, some people need a whole avenue. Some people need to go back to the drawing board. But more than that, I think the mania does inform it, because the people that will be doing that, whether they have a job or not, whether they get famous or not, whether or not they get any attention, whether or not they can pay their bills, those are maniacs. And they come from all different creative forms. It's not just music. Maniacs are apparent. It's just whether or not, you know, they're balanced enough.
So what was the gamble on this one?
Prophetic.
Okay. Flowers Van Drescher.
Yes. That was a little thing we did. It was a little thing we did. Yeah.
How did the collaboration come about?
That came about when going through plastic. I would pop up at the airport, and this cat would be driving me back, and then eventually he started playing tracks, and then he played that, and I was like, "Yo, what's up with that?" He was like, "This is a little thing I did." I was like, "All right, man, we gotta do something, man." And so we decided to get down when I remixed it, and that's what that became. And it was supposed to be a whole album. That's a whole nother story.
Okay.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll talk a bit more about London and Plastic People shortly.
Yeah.
But so apart from your label, doing edits and transitions are a very much big part of your repertoire, right?
Yep.
So tell us about your thinking behind putting an edit together. How do you choose the records you're going to work with?
Yeah.
Is there a kind of meaning to some of the edits that you put together?
Yeah. At first, when I first started doing the edits, it was basically because I wanted to play things at these sets that no one would hear in the same way. Then it became about little bits of songs that I thought were almost made that dope, right? They would just never left that part so do something about it. There would be that, and then there'd be other stuff where it was like I was trying to recreate edits that I had heard other people do that I never heard again. I can't find them anymore, so I'm trying to do edits by memory. Then I did not have the foresight to be putting those out without getting those people credit, so I got in trouble behind that. So that's what those ugly edits. That's why
Big
they
trouble?
quit. A little trouble, big enough trouble to make me stop doing them. And so then, but I never stopped making them. And so then I started to aim at things that I knew were kind of commercial, and then just a different take. And then, and so even to this day, like it got to a point where I was like, okay, now that I learned this one kung fu, production kung fu, and that was Logic 9, because everything was outboard. And then I got to Logic 9, and I was like, oh my God, unlimited tracks. Swimming in unlimited tracks. And then through production of my own stuff with Logic 9, I decided I got good enough to start doing these edits in a pretty quick way. So it got to a point where I made a point, kind of like a psychological caveat, that when I knew I had a gig coming, after I picked all my records, if I had enough time, if I had 4 hours at least before I was hitting this, I would do an edit just to play at the party I was playing. So that was happening before Plastic a lot of times. That was happening almost in every appearance I was doing for a while. And even now, there's specific stuff I got that'll never be heard until I play that next one. So like that, there's like a mountain of edits out there that I play that there's not enough room for them all to come out, you know what I mean? But like luckily there's avenues now, like through Prime I get them out, and through Mother Tongue I get them out now. And so they're properly, licensed and got the clearances. So yeah, it's gonna be more. But yeah, I did Peace Pipe, and I did I Want You For Myself, and those are official.
Let's hear a couple from your repertoire.
Yeah. there's also a tension release thing going on. Where I'll try to find a place where it was like a perfect Mobius strip, lock you in, and then like every once in a while let a bar out where the next part does it, and then back to that part, and then just mess with people's emotions. I love that part. And you're just like, oh my God, make it stop! Like stop. It's so like. So I used to enjoy that because with the EQ work, you can just really kind of change it each phrase that it happens. So drop the low, and if you got a system, now you're messing with people's emotions, and literally their body emotions. Because if you understand frequency, you got subs, and then you got the highs, and you got all this range of stuff in between, and so. If you've been listening to something over 20 minutes and you know had it hit you with just the highs and lows and all this shit is doing shit to your chakras and your shit and unlocking shit. Next thing you know, you're crying. Oh my God, I don't know why I'm crying. It's playing the same song. I remember it's like, yeah, that's what that EQ shit does to people.
I have fond memories of your EQ shit at Plastic, for sure, as a lot of us have here.
Yes.
Yeah, to some people in the room, you know, Plastic People is obviously folklore, you know, went around at that time. Please share, what Plastic meant to you. And particularly, you know, what was it like meeting Ade for the first time?
I think it was funny. I'll never forget this time. He picked me up from the airport, and he was in this little itty bitty car. I think it might have been like a Clio or a small thing, and he had all this building material stuff and dust all over the car.
That sounds like Ade for sure.
Yeah, man, and I didn't know he was building a house or something. And he's like, yeah, and I'm like, what is going on? What? I was like wondering, prior to that, he'd have other people come give me car service and shit to come bring me. Then he came and got me once. I was like, what is going on? You never get a hold of him. He's always got to do it. So Charlotte was always involved in making sure everything went. And then, the place had this energy, and the energy was the fact that was based on the fact that this is for this single purpose venue. You know, you gonna dance up in here, period. And like conversation is like pointless because the system was ridiculous. So it forces a certain amount of communion with people. So if you're dancing in a room, it's way different than talking. Talking is divisive. You know, movement actually is not as divisive as talking. It still can be. But if you're in a space that's tight like that was, like if you had 120 people in there, it was mashed. So you had to live with people. And so if you're playing in an environment like that, you got such a focused crowd, and you got a focused crowd quick. So that became like my laboratory. Like I was going I was able to get like there's stuff I could do there that I couldn't do anywhere else at that point, and learn the bravery of putting certain things together that would work. Like, I mean, Ade would mess around and play the whole Alice Coltrane side of a record there, and then say, okay, now you play. I'm like, what the? Okay. And then coming from a Chicago, then Detroit idea, it was a whole dimension opening up for me, because then it was like, oh, you mean I can play that too? Because I knew I could play that and that and that. Because Detroit is this. What you doing playing anything with soft shapes? No. Chicago is you better play soft shapes to be able to get respect. Of course there's this, but there's this. And then when I went down to Kansas City, I started to understand a little bit more hip-hop and reggae and things like that. But when you start to get to this other place with jazz here, and the acceptance that there's people that dance to jazz here, and that's a tradition, and that in Chicago, when you dance to jazz, it was like this danceable jazz. And so when you got here, it's like people actually play. I was like, oh. so I can play jazz too. So the challenge then was to start to incorporate that kind of idea into what I was playing, and then at the same time expand my reggae, because we hear where it goes down, and then expand these other parts of how I played the jazz funk thing, a little bit of the boogie thing. I never went that far into that range because I didn't have a place for it until Plastic People. So it grew me up and gave me a little more weight of how I play.
Let's go back there for a short while, slowly and surely.
Oh, wow. Oh, what that system will make me produce like. Yeah, changes. Yeah. The detail orientation you could get to when the system is that ridiculous.
Absolutely. And on, and
Yeah,
on, and on, and on. Beautiful.
Thank you. I wish she'd have put it out with me. I heard them other versions of remix that she did after that. I was like, man, she could have threw me a look, man. She could have threw me a look. But it was like kind of my little sneaky way of kind of going na and putting it out, you know, and with the little message on it, because I was like, see, remember this? You slept on this. You slept on this. But it's okay. I understood too that, you know, when an artist gets in those major situations, they don't have a lot of control over their stuff. And then, you know.
Well, we're blessed to hear it at Plastic, that's for sure.
Yes, indeed. That was a good thing. Yeah.
What's it like when you're remixed yourself, you know, when people actually remix you?
At first, I used to not like it. but then I feel like a hypocrite because I was like, how many samples that are jacked, and and then it's like, I can't be all like, would you leave my stuff alone, But then but then after a while when people going as far as like take all like my whole voice from a Red Bull, take a guy and then put some garbage ass track under it. All right, look here, man. No, man, I want my publishing, dog. Get my publishing, dog, because I did get to a point where I started clearing samples. So like for instance, that I didn't want to clear the sample on American Intelligence with with my man, the reggae artist, Levy Barrington. Barrington Levy, sorry. For The Vibes Is Right. And I didn't want to clear. I was like, man, just put it out. And at the time, Ruby was like, you better clear that shit. This is London. You fucking clear that shit. So I cleared it. And it was costly. But I felt like, all right, that's what it is. Like, you got to pay people for their original writing. And so I felt justified after that. And so from there on out, I started clearing samples. Yeah.
You happy with this one?
What the hell? Oh. This is interesting. I was like, that's not my beats. Oh, those Carly's beats. You put the extra foot on it right there. I was like, all right. So I was like, what is that?
Okay. And on.
Yeah, that was
a big one.
That was Carl.
Yeah.
That wasn't my version. Now, what's interesting was another learning lesson in the industry. Sometimes somebody more experienced, which Carl was, can reduce your writing in a way that works better than your own writing. And that's a hard ego check for somebody at the time. Like, it was an ego check. It was like, he rewrote my song. But it worked better than the original because of how we did it. Because the original didn't get as well known as the remix. And so I had a little bit of a thing I had to get over at that point. Like, and now I look back on it and realize how much of a good no-look pass that was coming from, one of my elders who was like, basically, hey, let me hook you up. Just blah, blah, blah. But like, because of the moment and where I was at the time, I was like, oh, it was my song. You know what I'm saying? But no, dude, look here, little bro. I got the name. I'm going to hook you up. Just be cool. Shut up. Sit there. Just sit in the back seat from with your belt on and you'll be fine. Relax. And so, you get over that and, that's respect, yeah.
Well, as a fun favorite with definitely RA Posse, that's for sure.
That's interesting. Now that they don't do that top 100 with no brothers on the list, yeah, I think I remember that. I remember that. But it's a new day. It's a new day. Yeah.
But things are changing though, right?
Yes. Yeah. Great. Thank God.
Sheesh.
We needed changes all around this motherfucker, man. Yeah.
As in the landscape that you've been part of for, good on 20, 30 years, right?
Yes, Lord of mercy.
So how's it changed for you in terms of like spaces, the kind of bookings that you get, and more importantly, the kind of audiences that you've been?
Well, it's interesting. I watched it change a lot, like over the 6 or 7 different cycles, where it's really hard to track where we are now. It's very difficult to track where we are now. The people are there. There's still the complete lack of brown and black people there still. That's missing. I think a lot of that has to do with socioeconomics.
What do you mean, just like the ticket prices or just general life?
Ticket prices and there being, whether we like it or not, we live in a certain world where there's certain pathways of music that are enforced with different cultures, period. I can't speak for how it works over here, but in America, trap rules the day. And if you understand what trap music originated from and what those conditions actually are, it served for me when it first started as something that I wasn't going to support based on what it was about. Talking about crack sales. A lot of people think trap music, trap is literally the place where you got crack sold. And like, if I remember it catching on over here early, and I got a chance to play Carnival. And I remembered there being an enamored thing going on, and it was scary to see that the promotion of that music and that pathway for black men at home and the pathways that my generation had access to, particularly Chicago. Like right now, it's 75th and Stony Island. You can't really walk there because you'll get killed, literally. And knowing that was one of the hotbeds of where there was music for myself and my generation was available, that was paved over and erased. It's hard to accept that this music had to survive and leave where it's from and go to where it can be copied, you can be made a facsimile of, you can have people use where this music came from and what it's about in a very detached and cold way. And to see those different shifts happen over and over and over again, it's hurtful. But you have to accept it because at the same time, this is the way of the world. So you have a choice to make. How much of how that feels do I put on the people that show up and spend their time with me? And how much of how that feels do I put on the people that are responsible for bringing me and putting these parties on and paying for that? And how much of that do I put on forces out of my control? And how much do I put that on my own needs? Non-negotiable responsibilities. You know, I can't walk into no insurance office and sit down at the computer and start selling that shit. I'm not built for that no more. The options for that have gone. So I'm over here in music and in the subcategory of way down in there with very little access to what the music industry used to be, and I don't have the benefit of the passport, the cultural passport to make. Because I put on a suit, most places in the world, I'm still, like, this is a fucked up joke. What do you call a black man with a suit on who's a lawyer? A nigga. And that sad joke was developed in the 20s, and it still rings true today in a lot of places. But the beauty, the biggest difference is that now we have information exchange. So anybody popping those jokes knows better. Now it can't be intergenerationally programmed. Now, if you're gonna pop that joke, you're deciding to pop that joke. You ain't been brainwashed into making that joke, at least worldwide anyway. And so that's the benefit of being able to be a cultural export. Where at home, if we get 100 people to show up, we're great. Here, you get 100 people show up, you had a failed night unless it's at a place like Last People, which sadly does not exist anymore. So we have to look at what that costs us over time. So where are the systems? What's the door policy? Who's playing? Who are the supporting acts? Who's promoting it? Who is it aimed at? When does it happen? You know, all those things matter. The most paramount is always going to be the sound system, because we want to translate. What have you got to say, and how does it get across to people? Look, everybody all sad, now stop it. It's the way of the world. Because if I ain't up here crying and shit, y'all ain't got the right to be feeling no way. Y'all all right. Y'all all right. Just make sure that you treat everybody out there who's not like you good. Everybody's not like you. They don't look. In fact, the most opposite person is like you. Treat them good. Treat them good. Treat them good. 'Cause you don't know what the fuck they've been through. You just don't. You have no idea. None of us have no idea. So we do that. Now you got a party. Now you got the beginning of a fucking party right there. But also respect. There's going to be people in the dance that know better than you. Don't you dare get up in front of the fucking person who's cutting the rug and dancing, popping them and spinning, and then you going to put your phone out? I'll beat your ass. I'll beat your ass. There was a thing that used to happen in plastic where we'd be cutting rugs in there, and invariably, somebody would walk up to the front, taking up space, and bring their phone out. I would make an ass of them, literally. Because I would cut the sound out and say, yeah. And then after a while, the people would do it for me. I didn't have to do it after a while. After a while, they show up, they're like, you better cut that, because I would cut the sound off. Fuck your phone. Fuck your phone. And then I recently went to Utrecht and did the same thing to these kids. Like these people, they put the phone on, and I was like, and they'd be like, oh, and I'd be like, nah, you lucky I ain't cut the sound on y'all, because y'all don't know. Because I do it now I'm disrupting the set and y'all fucked up. Because y'all not really haven't become one. That was the thing about plastic. You became one. Everybody was in it, and it was like, yeah, we gonna take off tonight. We gonna try to take off tonight. We try to snap out. But like going back on the road now, there's certain places they got it together. And it starts with that sound. That place in Utrecht, sound was right. That's the beginning. Because now no one. I get now why someone would take the phone out because it's such a experience right there. But we forget that before that would get etched into your memory, that moment. You wouldn't need your motherfucking phone. You would have to use your words to explain to somebody what happened to you. Not what you could prove happened to you, what fucking happened to you. You're different now. You're different. Why? Because you lived that damn moment right then and there and that person next to you. So now, without the phone, now when you see them in the street, you like, hey, yeah. And they go, you going back? Yeah, I'm going back. Going back. When you do that with the phone, they're like, yeah, you see that? Yeah. And now, neither one of y'all need to be there again. Neither one of y'all need to be there again. Maybe the other person might go because they want to capture it too. But then they get there and I'm going, fuck you. No. Put your phone down. Be here now. Be here now. Because I'm doing my best to be here now. So y'all be here now. But I'm not being here now for me. I'm being here now for y'all. And not because I want to be seen as being there for y'all. Because if I'm here for y'all, that means I know that what I brought, y'all need to get. Because y'all asked me to come here. So y'all must want this shit. So let me get out my way. Get out the way. And when I get out the way, then it goes crazy. Because then I'm gone. I'm not there. I'm not in the room no more. I'm a vehicle for what the fuck happening because these people that laid down this music done recorded this shit and walkie-talkie. Walkie-talkie. So no, don't touch me. I've had people try to touch me when I was in those moments. I turn around like and had to stop myself. Oh shit, I almost punched you in the mouth. I'm sorry. Don't touch me. In that moment, because I'm not here. And that's the most vulnerable place I am on the planet at this moment. You know, and so it's that you want to try to get to if you're going to be involved in music and try to translate. And sadly, most of us don't play music like that. I remember a point when it was, and I'm not saying I'm just saying there's plenty of people out there that can play their asses off and then get to those moments too. But the point I'm making is there has to be less salesmanship and more mania for there to be those moments. And it's the responsibility of the people showing up to decide what are you showing up with. So I think it's not so much the venue as it is the people. I used to think it was the system first. I'm starting to think it's the system second. Because if the people are showing up and they're ready, you can get away with a halfway decent sound system. It helps if it's excellent. But it kind of goes people first, system, selections. Then you're dealing with weather and door price and all that other shit. And your political shit. You know.
So what else can be done to, to I guess counter the spaces that are devoid of the roots of black music, the roots of dance music?
You see the people that show up in there and cut a rug and they get down. Put them on the list. List them people. Fuck the DJs unless they're gonna cut a rug. I ain't seen too many DJs come into a spot and cut a rug. Few. Then we could do a little bit of let them in. But let the people that come cut rugs, they come in, they hit the floor. There should always be a reserve at the door for those individuals. And it's usually, depending on the space, it's about 10%. 10% of that space should be reserved for people that just should be able to become called spark. I call them spark plugs, because they show everybody how to act in the dance, and they also bring new people into the dance. Because I had the greatest time. I was dancing with this person. They were so cool. And I was, yeah, because they know what it means, and they're gonna be honest. Because if the DJ ain't doing it, or the performer, whoever ain't doing it, they not gonna pretend. They're not gonna pretend. They're gonna get down on what the fuck they're gonna get down to. And so it's not so much whether or not you go with them. It's more the idea that you don't have to pretend either. And so naturally, it's gonna be things you like, and they don't. Now we're back in that community thing again. So I would say, let the people that boogie in free. but charge for water. Because we got to keep the doors open now. Because that's the other thing that happens. A lot of people that come dance, they coming in ready with everything they need. They need to self-sufficient. They not good for business at all. But they're good for maintaining the aura and good for the translation. You know, it's true. The people on the list, they ain't buying no drinks. People on the list never buy fucking drinks. No, they don't. But I would suggest this, make it mandatory. If you got in free, paid how much it costs to get in, tip at the bar. Tip. Or tip the DJ. Tip. Put a tip in. You know, or at least if you get in by yourself, don't try to get all 6 of your friends in free. You got in free, make all these other people never been paid. You know, like let new people pay because especially if you have a raw and real experience. One of the worst things I think that happened to a lot of this is festivals. And dynamically. Not necessarily the people. I've been to places and festivals that be dope, great crowds and all that shit. But dynamically, it's very difficult to translate. The sound, the way the music presented. But some are done very tastefully. Some are very difficult to do. You know, like that's a hard thing to do because it requires a lot of money. So because it requires a lot of money, it means a lot of sponsors. When you have a lot of sponsors, you have a lot of like very cynical ways of who you're picking to come because you want draws. You want people that's going to pull people in. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's the most talented or most innovative. And then the slot thing, and then it always runs over, and then sound requirements. It's a lot more difficult than a set venue with dynamics. That wall isn't moving. That ceiling is that height. So you have chances to improve the dynamics in the room so that the translation is good. When you're talking about moving parts, we're in the park. We don't know if it's going to rain. The density of the air is how long has the sound man been awake? Lord have mercy. If you got a tired sound man back of house in one of them festivals, you in for a bad night. He don't give a fuck about your sub 32Ks. He don't care. He don't care. He don't care. He don't care. Usually. But when those moments when they care, you can have a crazy transcendental experience if the ground is level and we can dance on it. Maybe we're not dancing in a mud pit. Maybe we ain't got lumpy ground. You know, sometimes you got all those different elements. But I do understand that that's a good way to expose people to a lot of music at the same time. So I don't think that should go away. But I think maybe more organization to, okay, what are the after parties after? Like officially. So you pay one price of the thing, and that gets you entry to the other thing. But they're officially lined up so that you can go to the venues, because then the venues need to be able to survive. Because that's when the locals are playing. Locals might not get a chance to rock at the thing because they don't have that draw. But if they might be tearing down the place over there with people that show up just for them. And that becomes interesting.
But there's a big problem, right? Because obviously you must have heard in the UK and I suppose other parts of the world where, you know, running a, 200, 300, 400, 500 per cap venue is becoming increasingly difficult, right? So what's the solution, man?
House parties. House parties. House parties. Literally. Move the furniture away. Have your mates come through and boogie. Start. Might have to start from the beginning again, and do that. If it can't be 500, make it 100. Make it 50. Make it 25. Put on tunes at home that y'all like and get down for a little bit. Hell, it's Thursday, you got 3 hours. You're old and you need a workout. Fucking boogie, cardio. Put your socks on. Double cardio. You ain't got no grip on your feet now. You got to slide. Yeah, cardio. Teach your babies how to get down. Give them some peace of mind, especially black people. We're teaching our men not to know how to dance no more. That's dangerous. We wonder why us motherfuckers shooting each other all the time. Because we're not releasing trauma. Whole generation of people not learning how to release trauma. It's dangerous, and that's at the core of what I consider the music. Because remember, this is an American art form, and it started the top of house music specifically. Like it expanded. Now we got different reasons for making it. But if the point of struggle is where it came from, you won't hear tension in the drums. That's why you'll hear all these songs that sound like 86, but if you squint, ain't no struggle in the stroke. Where the struggle in the stroke? Nah, you need struggle, but now we got all types of global struggle. And so that now we have difference. And now we have these different methodologies and reasons why we need to dance. You know, I still think it's something at the core that has an issue. So like to really know what's going to happen in other places, it has to be addressed at home. You know, and so, you know, that comes down again. We need to secure spaces with systems. It's the same solution everywhere, where here we all have to go back to the crib and start having free shit. Come through. We all dancing tonight. We doing the lock-in. You know, don't tell the cops. We told the neighbors we getting them high for the night. Tell them to come over. We cooking them dinner, you know. And in that way, people at least get the appetite. The next cycle might be, okay, we're in positions of a little bit of power. Okay, well, maybe we can do a little something over here. Then off times, too. Sunday afternoons, Tuesday nights. Never mind Friday and Saturday. Let's do the other ones, too. You know, add those in. It becomes interesting.
So apparently you retired from DJing.
Yeah, I did. Everybody retired when I retired. It was COVID. that shut it all down. And that basically put me in a place where I was like, all right, well, what am I gonna do? You know, you find out how fragile this playing music thing is, that at any given moment, you know, the conditions of being able to go play this music is stopped. Now being around people for a while was not possible. And that was devastating. You know, like what do you do then? But then you can't stop. And that was kind of what went on with me. It was like, all right, well, okay, this is it. Oh, I'm talking shit now. So I'm going to call out everything I saw wrong. But at the same time, I'm going to find a way to keep doing it in my own way. And so production went up. So I did a lot of creative stuff, lot of music. Like there's not such a backlog of stuff that needs to come out. It's kind of crazy. And then digging more records. And then what do you call it? Started to do those radio shows. Started recording those sets, those NTS things. Those would start to come out. So I was a little bit more. You could be a little bit more directed about what you want to say at any given moment. That was interesting. And then also too, you know, opportunities popped up at home. So the world started to slowly open up, and I decided, okay, maybe this ain't it yet. You know, maybe there's more. And so I started to slowly go out, did something at home. It's a residency at a place. And I decided to make it a point to do 8-hour sets, 9-hour sets every time. Point was being, I might not get a chance to say all these things again. Any given moment, we all could be out of here. And the challenge of can I walk through a Sunday afternoon starting at 5 or going till 2 in the morning. How the challenge of playing that way. Of what is a Sunday afternoon where you got grandmamas and grandbabies in the house? How do you get that to translate into a full beating by the time you get to 2 a.m.? And so it was a place that served really, really strong drinks. And so I learned that I play better the less drinks I have. And then also too, start to see the vicissitudes and the reality of what happens when you get plus 45 and you start getting an appetite for drinking. And I saw left and right. And we see all the headlines, what goes on. Most times when you hear about these giants falling, it's because they drank themselves into the situation they're in. And those they have an effect. So I was like, all right, how long can I go? So I would play the whole 8-hour set, and like the people at the venue mad. They're like, Theo's not drinking tonight. It's like, nah, I'm not drinking tonight. Give me a shot at the end of my set. How about that? We'll do that. Yeah.
So what can we expect to hear from you tomorrow night?
Well, expect nothing. Show up as an empty plate, and I will cook something. There's gonna be a couple of these in here. This is, some stuff. A couple of these jams. I know there's one thing I have to play. I'm gonna see if I can dig it out now. Oh, well, this is one thing. I'll probably play this. This is a Brutus. My boy put this out, Spectre. He's dope. Hopefully he gets more chances to come rock. He's actually a ridiculous DJ. Probably play this. Yeah, Free Myself. A little bit of this. Melissa Rose. It's cold. But then there's new shit. See, I love this visual part of things, and you don't get this with files. You just don't. You got to dig through and find the one that you see. It looks like the one. Is that the one? No, that ain't the one. Is that the one? No, that ain't the one. Oh, yeah, I made this one. Yeah, Howard. That's my guy. Believe it or not, he did the scratches on the first Slum Village cassette. That's him on the ones and twos. I'm looking for this one. Oh, here it is. This one I'm definitely playing. Okay, nice. This is my new record.
Nice.
I'm gonna play that one. I'm definitely playing that one. That was a dedication to Amp Fiddler. Positive mental attitude. I'm sure you guys can spell. There you go. Yeah.
Theo, thank you very much for your time, man. Thank you.
And thank you, guys.